Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this can be my review for Homeland Season 4, Episode 4, Iron in the Fire. And this episode was really good. I definitely really enjoyed this episode. Not as good as last week's, but I still really enjoyed it. I thought this episode was really crazy. Definitely shit's about to go down in this show. It's getting really crazy, and Carrie's officially a villain. I gotta say that. Carrie's officially a villain, and I really love this episode. And there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, a lot of spying, and that's the thing I love about the season, is that it's mostly just about spying. And let's just get to this episode because I really enjoyed it. Probably the second best episode of the season. I really enjoyed last week's. I thought last week's was the best, but this is probably the second best. I still really loved it. So Carrie's sitting in her office looking at research on insurgents, and Redmond comes in and startles her, and he asks what she's looking for. And she says she's trying to get familiar with the local ISI agents, and he tells her she won't find Farhad Ghazi in their database because he's an outsourced guy, and the ISI uses him, and he leaves her to look through the file he pulled for her, so she prints his photo. So that was definitely very interesting, because again, the thing that she's trying to find out is, you know, who, if that the Sandy's thing, the Sandy's death was premeditated. She's trying to find out who was the source of it, basically. So now she knows that it's Farhad Ghazi. So Ayan, meanwhile, is back on the bus, looking very tense, and he gets off at Kieran's house, who of course is his girlfriend, and knocks on her door. But her dad isn't there, so she lets him in. And he asks if she has the bag he left, and she says Baba found it. And Ayan says he needs the bag, but she says he smashed anything and wouldn't stop even though he bagged. And she asks who the medicine was for, and her father comes in and basically thinks that Ayan is a drug dealer, which I thought was definitely a very interesting twist. I wasn't expecting that, and I thought that was definitely very interesting. And her dad says how he's going to report him to the medical school for stealing drugs, and he says he'll be expelled, and he throws Ayan out of their house while he yells that they're wrong and they'll see, and he leaves, and Carrie is watched as she gets out of her car at Saul's hotel, and again, that was definitely a crazy scene. So we see Carrie, he's checking out, but she asks if they can talk, and she asks if he still has his local contacts, and asks if he's talked to them lately. And she tells him Sandy's death was premeditated by the ISI, and shows him the pic from the video, and then tells him that it's Ghazi who does web work for ISI. And she says only she and Quinn knew, but he says the White House needs to know. Here's the thing that's interesting about Saul. Carrie claims she doesn't really need Saul's help. Why is she going to Saul's help then? She said last week's episode that she doesn't really want his help, but I guess she does, so I don't know. I guess she wants his help. So she says how some diplomats are going to be kicked out, and that's the end of it. And she says something larger is going on. He tells her Quinn called him last week, concerned about her, and she says Quinn is the one who's wigging out. And she asks if Saul is going to help or not. And Quinn then shows up at the office, and Farah greets him, but says Carrie isn't in yet. And she offers him coffee, and he accepts, and he finds a free office and asks her to catch him up. So she basically tells him that Carrie's with Saul, talking about the operation. She says Carrie is good, and he's impressed how fast Carrie got the station up and running. And again, the whole thing about this is that he likes Carrie. We know this. We know that's why he doesn't want to come back to work. We know that's why he's ignoring her, all that stuff. So Max comes in and tells Farah that Ayan is there. So she heads in to talk to him. And he says he'll only talk to Carrie, and Farah says she'll be in there for about 10 minutes. And he starts to leave, and she offers him to let him wait in private in her office and gets him to stay. And I gotta say, Farah is a really good spy. I mean, she definitely is doing a very good job spying for Carrie. I gotta say that. I mean, she definitely is a very good spy, definitely. So she sits him down and offers him a glass of water, and he's nervous, but he stays. And Redmond's guy reports back on Carrie's movements, and he wonders if anyone on her detail will play ball with them. So he asks the guy to find out where they frame Carrie had of Ghazi came from, and where Ghazi came from. And Carrie shows up and nods to Quinn, but heads straight in to talk to Ayan. And he asks about getting him out of Pakistan. She says they get sources out of tricky situations all the time. He says he needs 80,000 rupees, which is about $600, pretty much. In American money, that's $600, which is a lot of money, definitely. So she says she needs to know what it's for, and he says he can't tell her, and she shows him Ghazi's photo, and asks if this is who threatened him. And I gotta say, Ayan's a very good character because he's coming across as very shady right now, definitely. Very shady. You don't know what he's doing, and I definitely like that about his character. So he's a supporting role, but I definitely really enjoy his character, and he might even be my favorite character possibly, just because of how good of a character he really is. This really made me think something, though, with this scene. Carrie's kind of ruining his life. She kind of is, because, like, the thing that made me realize she's a villain is just how she's so, you know, she makes him think she's working with him, and really she's working against him, because, of course, they're the people that killed, his people killed Sandy, and she fired that drone strike on them, and that attack happened, and she really doesn't give a shit about him. She's only working with him so she can get the proper intel that she needs. That's why she's doing it. So definitely that makes me think that Carrie's a villain now. So basically, he says he can't tell her. She shows him Ghazi's photo and asks if this is who threatened him, and she says it is, and he's in more trouble than he can imagine. And he starts crying, and she comforts him, and Quinn watches, and she asks what's going on, and kneels beside him and asks if he's been blackmailed, and she asks why he needs the money, and says if he can't tell her, and she asks if the money will fix whatever it is, and he says it might, and she agrees. So she asks Farrah for the money, and Carrie has to send someone with him, but he says he has to do it alone, and Farrah hands over the money. Carrie gives it to her. Ayan thanks her and says to be safe and to come back to them as soon as possible to get out of the country. So she sends Farrah to track the kid. Ayan's now left, and Max is already in the van. And then Quinn comes out and tells Carrie that getting the kid asylum is a tough sell. Definitely, I agree with that. So she says how Ghazi visited the kid last week and he's intrigued. And they head out, and the ambassador's husband is finishing a lecture. And this woman comes in and says she knows his friend Sandy, and he asks who she is. And she says she benefited from their friendship and says his death doesn't have to end that way. So basically, she tells him she knows he was the one providing classified documents from the ambassador's desk to them. And the question is, does his wife know he was leaking the docs, or is he stealing from her? So then Saul shows up with a contact, Bunny, and they greet each other warmly, and Bunny says tongues are waggling all over the club, and Saul offers to go elsewhere, but Bunny says fuck all the guys that are looking. So Carrie and her guys, meanwhile, are watching Ghazi, and they bugged his home phone and laptop, and she says she wants his phone bugged, and they tell her they need to get within 5 feet of him. So Quinn is suggesting that they try while he's asleep if the guy stays in his apartment. And it's a very intense scene at this point. So Bunny and Saul chat over lunch about how times have changed, and Bunny says he knows 9/11 is an Israel hoax, and Saul says that's crazy. Bunny thinks that Bush was lying about Iraq, so why not 9/11? That's definitely very interesting. I mean, 9/11 definitely was not a hoax. He doesn't think that 9/11 is true. So Saul says he needs to talk to someone from ISI, and Bunny says it's not a good time for that. And he tells Saul to go home, spend time with his wife, and Saul reminds him he owes him a favor. And Bunny says it's late in the game to call in a chat. And he says the Americans are being driven out just like the Russians were. So Bunny says the Taliban has won, but Saul tells him he can do the favor to be gracious. So that was definitely very interesting. So Farrah and Max are following Ayan taxi, and it pulls over, and they are at Omaya and the teaching hospital. Max wonders why he's there, because they don't know why Ayan's at this hospital. And the kid gets out, and Farrah says they need to hear, and says she'll keep out of sight. And she pulls up her hood and gets out of the car and heads closer. So Max checks in on her earbud and says she can't get any closer. He's handling the money to a woman, and she says it looks like she told him to wait, and they decide to wait too. So then Quinn is sneaking up on Ghazi's place and picks the lock, and he says he has a silence gun with him. And Carrie and the others are watching him on the cameras, and they've bugged the guy's place with it. So he creeps closer and triggers the app to access the phone, and the guy has a gun by his bed where his phone is, and this is a really intense scene here. The BlackBerry switches on, we got a clone, but then the guy's phone rings, and Quinn creeps out and hides behind a wall, but it's stuck in the apartment. So he listened in on the call, which was in Urdu, and Ghazi gets off the call and looks out the window, and he walks back to his bedroom, and Carrie tells Quinn to go now. So Parvez tells Carrie the call was local, and there was a friend asking him to go clubbing. And Boyd calls about, I thought this was definitely very interesting. Boyd calls about changing jobs to get out of Pakistan, and he begs his friend Bill to get any job he can back in the States so that he can sell to his wife. And he comes in, and he finds Martha, who is an ambassador wife, still in her office working. And she asks if something is wrong. He says GW offered him his old job back. And she says Bill Nicholas himself called you to end his exile. And he says they want him back as soon as possible. And he says within a week. And she asks if their marriage will survive another separation. He says he can't risk his career. And he says he risked it plagiarizing a chapter of the book. and that's why he's in academic exile, basically. And he tells her it's not good for Toby to be so far away from home. And so he spent his whole life following her around. He tells her he already took the job and says fine, and that figures. She goes back to work and effectively dismisses him. He leaves, and she looks very unhappy. So that was definitely very interesting. I thought this next scene was definitely a very well done scene, and I really like this next scene with Carrie and Quinn. She asks Quinn about the psych eval, and he reveals that he's close to being done. He's pretty much wants to get out of this job. So she says that makes her even more grateful than that he's there, because he was the one that basically told her everything was going on. So she's very happy that that he's working with her right now. He says he didn't want to live in a bunker and kill people by remote control, and she says that's harsh. And he says when he killed that kid, he was pretty much done, because, he killed that kid in Caracas, and he doesn't want to kill anyone anymore, and, he's pretty much done after that. I can understand that, definitely. He doesn't want to get himself into more trouble. He went to jail because of it, so obviously it makes sense, because here's the thing. He went to jail over that, and he doesn't want to go to jail again, so I think that's why he doesn't want to really do that anymore. So he tells her going mission to mission is like a drug, and Carrie says he wasn't a bad guy, but he insists that he was, and she asks why he's doing this, and he says she needs to hear it, and she says she needs help, and Quinn tells Carrie he'll stay at the surveillance shop, and she leaves, wishing him good night, and on the way back, she stares out the window in thought. So then early in the morning, Max wakes Farah and tells her the nurse is coming out that Ayan gave money to, and she wakes up, and they're still on the stakeout and everything. So they snap photos of the woman, and they spot Ayan, who greets the nurse, and she slips them a bag, and they wonder what it is. And Farah says likely medicine, because, they pretty much think he's getting medicine from him. So he goes for a cab, and they scramble to follow, and Carrie tells Redmond to call off his guide, and says ISI is enough of a tale to shake, and he tries to say it's keeping her safe in the wake of what happened to Sandy, but she tells him to stop. And she says he has no trouble getting out, and he tells her about a secret tunnel. And she asks why he didn't tell her, and he says she never asked. So Saul is having breakfast at a hotel when when all the other diners get up and leave, and some imposing people come in and close the doors, and this guy checks Saul and frisks him, and Saul asks what the fuck is this, and they pry that the SIM card out of his phone as well, and that was definitely really interesting, because I myself was like, what's going on here? So we see this man sit down at his table, and the man is actually the guy that played Dev on Smash. If you guys remember, that's one of my favorite shows of all time. It was cool to see him do another role. I was happy to see him, because Roger Joffrey is definitely a very good actor. I think he's definitely a really good actor, and it was good to see him in another role. So he sits on his table and asks if Bunny sent him, and Saul says he wants to talk about Sandy's murder. But the man asks why he's speaking, and Saul, who is ex-CIA, Saul, private consultant, or Carrie. And Saul asks who's wanted him murdered, and then he tells him who's asking, and he says he was recognized on the street and killed for a drone strike retaliation. And Saul says he knows about an ISI operative was on the ground orchestrating the whole thing, and Saul says the timing of the leak explains a lot, and the man gets bristly, and Saul says it wouldn't be the first time ISI targeted one of them, and the man gets up and says this meeting was only a courtesy for Bunny, and he leaves. So that was definitely really interesting. I was wondering what was going to happen there. So Carrie then shows up at the surveillance point, and she says Saul called her to confirm he stirred the pot, and she has to talk to Quinn in private. And she says she knows he didn't want to come back there, and thanks him again, and says it means a lot, and she says they would be nowhere on this without him, and he says they still might be, and she asks if they're good, and he says they are. So then there's traffic involving a cabbage truck accident, which was really interesting, and Ian peeks out of his cab, and Farah says he's stuck too, but is getting out, so excuse me. She says they're going to lose him, and she pulls up her veil, and Max tells her not to do anything stupid, and she hops out, and he slides over to drive, and she hurries after Ayan through the mess of the car, and he's in a tunnel under the street, and then in the market, and she keeps her distance. He comes out, and she's cut off by a pedicab and loses him. So she keeps going, and she's looking around. A bunch of young men are running into a mosque, and she finally spots him. He's handed the bag of medicine to someone, and then some trucks pull up, and armed men get out, and she hides her face. So Carrie wakes Quinn, and Garzi gets a call, and he shouts for Quarter, the translator, and the caller is a woman speaking Arabic, and he hands the call, because he doesn't know what she's saying, obviously. So Quinn says the caller says his laundry is ready for pickup, and he crushes his phone, and Carrie says it's an exit code. They didn't trace the call, and they tell her the guy is running. So she curses and says they only have to take him, and Quinn asks if she's kidding, and he says he's the only link between Sandy's murder and the ISI, and Quinn says this guy is highly trained, and he pretty much thinks that this is the guy. So she heads out, and Quinn says the guy could have backup, which is definitely not a good thing. They don't want this guy to have backup, obviously. So Farah calls, and Carrie doesn't want to take it, but she says it's urgent, and she tells Carrie that Haquini is alive, and she just saw him with Ayan. And she says they embraced, and then the guy left in an SUV. So Carrie asks if she's sure, and Farah tells her she sent her a video, and they tell her Garzi is leaving, but she says they may have a game changer here. So she watches the video, and sure enough, it's Haquini. The Taliban said they killed him. So she asks if Farah can follow, but she says she's on foot, and she tells her good job and to get back to the office in case Ayan shows up. And again, you can definitely see that Carrie is trying to ruin this kid's life, definitely. She is doing pretty much whatever she can to ruin his life, and really, I think that definitely makes Carrie a villain. Even though, she is our main character here, she's definitely a villain. Now, that doesn't mean she's not a good character. She's a very good character, in my opinion. But she definitely is a villain. So she asks what Quinn is thinking, and he says that Sandy's death makes sense now. He was killed and this was definitely interesting. He was basically killed to protect Queenie, and Quinn says that the guy wasn't there at all, and that they wanted to get him off the Americans' radar. So they wonder what ISI's angle here is, because they really don't know what it is. So then we see Professor Boyd. He's there to pack up his office, but then we see that mysterious woman again with a couple of thugs, and he tells her she's risking a serious diplomatic incident. And again, I was like, who is this woman? Why is she there? And he says he's not the guy and he's leaving, and she tells him he's not and has had to change of heart. So her guys punch him and force him into a chair, and Boyd demands a call, and she brings him his phone. And she says if he calls, a packet will arrive to FBI HQ in DC, showing the documents he stole from his wife's computer, and the timeline showing what he's done. She says he'll be arrested for treason, and his wife's career is done. So he really has a lot of problems there. So he asks who she is, and she says he can call her Tasmeen, and beyond that, he doesn't need to know. And that was definitely really interesting how secretive she's being. I definitely feel like this girl is hiding something. She says he can leave Islamabad a free man if he does what she wants, and she says the FBI and his wife will never know. She hands him a key, and he asks what it is, and she says it's how they begin. So my question is he actually going to listen to her? Is he going to listen to her, or is he going to basically do his own thing? I don't exactly know what he's going to do, but I guess we'll just have to see what he's going to do. So then we see the very last scene, and back at the office, Carrie tells Farah that Ayan will be back. She says if he had another way, he would have gone with a Queenie, and Farah asks if she should start on a passport for him, and he reminds her that she promised to get him out of Pakistan. And Carrie says he's not going anywhere, and that he's aiding a terrorist. And Carrie says a stalking horse is something you hide between when stalking Query, and she says that's what they'll do to get his uncle. And Farah says he'll never agree, and Carrie says to get him to the safe house and she'll worry about it. So Quinn sits at his desk late, bouncing a ball off the wall, and Carrie lies in bed, sleeping, when there's a knock. She flips on the light and goes to the door, and Farah's there with Ayan. So she lets the kid in, tells Farah she'll see her tomorrow, and she asks if he's okay. And it's a really interesting scene here between her and Ayan. Pretty much, we get like a 8-minute scene with her and Ayan. And she asks if he did what he needed to, and she asks how else she can help, and he thanks her for the money and says he'll pay her back, and she offers to take his bag, but he says no, he doesn't want her to take his bag. So she says he can stay there, and he asks about London, and she says it will be 2 to 3 days to give him a passport and visa, but tells him he's safe there, and she says she'll move him into a hotel tomorrow so he can have privacy, but says they can make up the couch for him tonight, and she goes to get bedding and a pillow, but checks herself in the mirror first. She comes out and asks him to give her a hand. And he does, and they pull the pillows off the sofa, and this kind of reminded me of a scene from The Americans. You know how, I've said this before, in The Americans, they'll try to get, information by having sex with someone. She wasn't necessarily having sex with him, but she was definitely acting very sexual towards him. I mean, she's wearing, like, a very revealing clothes at this point. Like, she is definitely trying to get information here. So she stands up very close, bumps him, then says sorry. She puts down the pillow, offers a blanket. She lays that out for him too. She says he must be exhausted and tells him to get some rest. She says it will all work out no matter what he's feeling now. She says the worst is over and says he deserves a little grace. But he looks around, she asks what's the matter. And he says there's something he should have told her. And she asks what it was. And I thought this was very interesting. He says he got kicked out of medical school yesterday. And she asks why. And he says they accused him of stealing from the hospital pharmacy. And she puts a hand on his knee and says it's okay, but he insists he didn't do it. and he asks if it will keep him out of King's College, and she says it won't. He takes her hand and asks how, and she says she'll make them understand, and she tells him not to worry so much. So again, it's getting really just she's getting really intense here, and especially because we know she does not care for this kid. We know she's just doing this so she can get information out of him. So she's moving her hand closer to his crotch, and he asks what she's doing, and she says nothing but keeps touching him. She leans in and kisses him, looks at her, and he looks at her in surprise, and she asks if that's okay, and he says he doesn't know. She asks if he's never done this before, and he says no. She leans in and kisses him again, puts her arms around him, kisses him deeply, then punches him back into the sofa, straddles him, and kisses her back, touches her. She pauses, but then reaches for her and pulls her back into a kiss. So my prediction is that these two are definitely gonna have sex. I feel like this is gonna be a lot like Clark and Martha, Philip and Martha in The Americans, where Philip is posing as Clark and he's just trying to get information out of her, so he starts a relationship with her. I don't know if Carrie's gonna go that far, but I definitely feel like she's gonna go far here because, she really wants information out of this kid. So I'm interested in seeing what's gonna happen there, definitely. So let me know what you think is gonna happen. I definitely feel that Ayan should not be working with her. Like, he has no idea what she's doing. He has no idea that she basically is going to turn him against his entire family. It's honestly really sad what she's doing. It really is. As far as Boyd goes, I really hope he listens to this girl, but I honestly don't know if I trust her. I definitely feel that Tasmeen is hiding something. I don't know what it is, but I feel it's definitely she's hiding something. I'm looking forward to seeing what definitely is going to happen there. Also, do you guys feel Carrie's a villain now? I really feel that after this episode, she's a villain. She is definitely hurting Ayan. She's gonna get him to a world of trouble. Here's the thing: he's gonna have sex with her. He's gonna reveal this stuff to her, and then she's probably gonna turn against him in the end. We know that's gonna happen. We just know, and it's gonna be really sad, definitely. But that's what's interesting about our character is that our main character is not only an anti-hero, she's now an antagonist. Definitely, she is definitely an antagonist, and like I'm not rooting for her. I'm rooting for Ayan, but I can't. But Ayan's not gonna win here because Carrie's the main character. And as far as Saul goes, I don't know what's gonna happen with Saul. I guess we'll have to see if he allies with these people. I don't know with Saul what's gonna happen. We'll have to see. But overall, this was a great episode. I loved it. I'm really looking forward to the next episode. I thought this was the second best episode of the season, but I'm really loving this season. I definitely feel this is going to be the best season of Homeland. That's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought this episode. I'll see you guys in my next review, which will be for my review of Borak Empire. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.